What would you do if you lost everything that defined you in a single moment? Emily Harper's eyes snapped open to the sting of hardwood against her cheek. The floor of her Boulder, Colorado, bedroom was cold and unyielding, a stark contrast to the warmth of her bed just moments ago, or so she thought. Confusion clouded her mind as she tried to piece together how she'd ended up here, sprawled like a broken toy. The soft glow of dawn seeped through the curtains, casting long shadows over her cluttered room, running shoes stacked in the corner, race medals pinned to the wall like badges of honor, a framed photo of her crossing the Denver Marathon finish line. Her heart pounded. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. She tried to push herself up, but her legs, those strong, reliable legs that had carried her through mountain trails and marathons, felt like dead weight. She willed them to move, to bend, to do anything. Nothing. Panic clawed at her chest, sharp and suffocating. No, 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 she whispered, her voice barely audible. This wasn't a cramp or a pulled muscle. This was something else entirely. Mom. Jake's voice, high and laced with fear, cut through the haze. Her 10-year-old son stood in the doorway, clutching his worn copy of Elon Musk, inventor, entrepreneur, and visionary. His freckled face, so much like hers, was pale, his brown eyes wide with worry. Emily's stomach twisted. She was supposed to be his rock, his marathon running, do-it-all single mom. Not this helpless figure on the floor. Jake, honey, I'm okay, she lied, forcing her voice to stay steady. She propped herself up on her elbows, her runner's arms trembling under the effort. The room tilted slightly, and she gripped the edge of her bed frame, desperate to anchor herself. Her legs remained lifeless, mocking her with their stillness. I just fell. Help me get to the couch, okay? Jake hesitated, his small hands hovering as if afraid to touch her. Then he nodded, dropping his book and scrambling to her side. His skinny arms were surprisingly strong as he helped her drag herself across the floor, through the narrow hallway of their cozy Boulder home, and onto the living room couch. The effort left Emily breathless, her pride battered. She collapsed against the cushions, her gaze landing on the marathon photo on the wall, her arms raised in triumph, her smile radiant. That woman felt like a stranger now. Should I call Sarah? Jake asked, already grabbing her phone from the coffee table. Sarah Mitchell, Emily's best friend and a nurse at Boulder Community Hospital, would know what to do. Emily nodded, her throat too tight to speak. As Jake dialed, she stared at her legs, willing them to move, to twitch, to give her some sign they weren't gone for good. The silence of her body was deafening. The morning light poured through the living room window, painting the flatirons in the distance with a golden hue. Emily had run those trails countless times, the crunch of gravel under her sneakers a rhythm as familiar as her heartbeat. Running was her escape, her identity, her proof that she could handle anything, her mother's abandonment, her divorce from Jake's father, the grind of raising a kid alone. Without it, who was she? Sarah burst through the front door 15 minutes later, her navy scrubs wrinkled from a night shift. Her blonde ponytail swung as she knelt beside Emily, her sharp blue eyes scanning her friend's face. Talk to me. What happened? I can't move my legs, Emily said, the words tasting like failure. I woke up on the floor. They just stopped working. Her voice cracked, and she hated how small it sounded. She was 32, a former marathon runner, a mom who could juggle work, school pickups, and 10-mile runs. She wasn't supposed to be this. Sarah's face tightened, but her nurse's calm took over. She checked Emily's pulse, her fingers steady against Emily's wrist. Any pain? Tingling? Anything before this happened? Emily shook her head. I ran yesterday. 10 miles, no problem. I felt fine. Her voice wavered. Sarah, what's happening to me? We're going to the hospital, Sarah said firmly, standing up. Jake, grab your mom's jacket and shoes. We're leaving now. She turned back to Emily, squeezing her hand. "We'll figure this out, Em. You're tough as nails, remember? You ran the Leadville 100. This is just another hill to climb." Emily forced a smile, but doubt gnawed at her. Tough? She didn't feel tough. She felt like a runner who couldn't run, a mother who couldn't protect her son, a woman who'd lost her anchor in a single, incomprehensible moment. As Sarah and Jake helped her into Sarah's SUV, the Colorado sunrise glowed over the mountains, its beauty a cruel contrast to the fear churning inside her. Jake climbed into the back seat, still clutching his Elon Musk book. "We'll fix this, Mom," he said, his voice firm despite the tremble in it. "Maybe it's like one of Elon's experiments. He'd know how to solve this, right? Like with his rockets or neural stuff." Emily's heart ached at his faith, so pure and unshakable. She wanted to believe him, to cling to the idea that some genius out there, someone like Musk, could unravel this nightmare. But as Sarah drove toward the hospital, the reality settled in: no one was coming to save her. Not Musk, not Sarah, not anyone. If she was going to get through this, she'd have to fight for it herself. The hospital loomed ahead, its glass facade reflecting the morning light. Emily's mind raced with questions she couldn't answer. What if this was permanent? What if she couldn't work, couldn't care for Jake, couldn't run? The thought was a knife to her chest, sharp and relentless. But as Jake reached over the seat to squeeze her shoulder, his small hand warm against her skin, a flicker of resolve sparked inside her. She wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Emily sat in a sterile hospital room, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead doing little to drown out the chaos in her mind. Her legs, draped in a thin hospital gown, lay motionless on the exam table. The weight of their stillness pressed against her chest, heavier than any marathon's final mile. Jake sat cross-legged on a chair in the corner, his nose buried in his Elon Musk book, while Sarah paced by the window, her phone pressed to her ear as she argued with a nurse about expediting Emily's tests. The room smelled of antiseptic and uncertainty, a far cry from the pine-scented trails of Boulder's Flatirons where Emily had always found clarity. Her mind drifted, unmoored by the present, pulling her back to the moments that had shaped her. Running had been her lifeline since she was a girl, a way to outrun the pain of a fractured family. She was 8 when her mother, Laura, walked out, leaving behind a half-packed suitcase and a note that read, "I need to find myself. I'm sorry." Emily had found the note crumpled in the trash, her father too broken to explain. From that day, she ran, first around the block, then through the trails of her suburban Denver neighborhood, her sneakers pounding out the hurt. Each step was a promise, she'd never be like Laura. She'd be strong, dependable, whole. By high school, Emily was a track star, her name etched on plaques in the school gym. College brought scholarships, then marathons, grueling, glorious races that tested her body and soul. The Denver Marathon at 22 was her pinnacle, her legs churning through the final mile as the crowd roared. She'd crossed the finish line, arms raised, feeling invincible. That was the Emily Harper she knew, the woman who could push through anything, who could carry herself and her son through life's hardest moments. Jake was her other anchor. Born when Emily was just 22, he'd arrived in the midst of her crumbling marriage to Tom, a charming but unreliable man who'd promised forever and delivered only excuses. The divorce had been brutal, but Jake's gummy smiles and later his endless questions about rockets and tech had kept her going. She'd built a life for them in Boulder, a cozy 2-bedroom home filled with race medals and Jake's science projects. She worked as a graphic designer, freelancing to make ends meet, but running was her true north. Every morning, she'd lace up her sneakers, kiss Jake's forehead, and hit the trails, the rhythm of her breath syncing with the sunrise. Sarah had been there through it all. They'd met at a local running club, bonding over blisters and bad coffee. Sarah, a nurse with a sharp wit and a heart bigger than the Rockies, had become family. When Tom left, Sarah was the one who showed up with pizza and a shoulder to cry on. When Emily ran her first ultramarathon, Sarah was at the finish line, cheering louder than anyone. Now, as Sarah hung up her phone and crossed the hospital room, her face etched with worry, Emily felt a pang of gratitude. She wasn't alone, not yet. "Tests are scheduled for this afternoon," Sarah said, sitting on the edge of the exam table. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her fear. "Dr. Bennett's good, Em. He'll figure this out." Emily nodded, but her gaze drifted to Jake. He was reading about Musk's Neuralink project, his lips moving silently as he absorbed every word. Jake's obsession with Elon Musk had started with a school project on SpaceX, and now the billionaire was his hero, a symbol of solving impossible problems. Emily envied his faith. To Jake, the world was a puzzle Musk could crack: rockets, brains, maybe even her legs. "Mom, listen to this," Jake said, his voice bright despite the sterile room. He held up the book, pointing to a page. "Elon says the human body is like a machine. If you find the right code, you can fix anything. Maybe there's a code for your legs." Emily forced a smile, her heart aching. "Maybe, buddy." She wanted to believe him, to imagine some genius out there could rewrite her body's failure. But the memory of Laura's note, "I'm sorry," crept in, a reminder that not all broken things could be fixed. Laura had reached out a few times over the years, sending letters Emily never answered. The last one, a year ago, had arrived with a photo of Laura at a beach, her hair graying but her smile unchanged. Emily had burned it, the flames licking away the hurt but not the questions. Why had Laura left? Why hadn't she fought to stay? The hospital room door opened, and a nurse wheeled in a tray of medical supplies. Emily's stomach churned. She wasn't ready for this: the tests, the waiting, the possibility of a diagnosis that could steal everything. Running was her proof that she was enough, that she could outpace her mother's absence, her ex-husband's betrayal, the weight of raising Jake alone. Without it, she felt like she was falling again, only this time there was no floor to catch her. Sarah squeezed her hand, grounding her. "You're still you, Em," she said softly. "Legs or no legs, you're the strongest person I know." Emily clung to those words, but doubt lingered. She looked at Jake, his eyes bright with hope, and made a silent promise: she'd fight for him, for them, no matter what the tests revealed. The road ahead was uncertain, but she'd faced long runs before. This was just another trail, another hill, another chance to prove she could keep going. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and broken dreams, a sterile cage that trapped Emily Harper in a body she no longer recognized. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow on the white walls of Boulder Community Hospital. Emily sat propped up on the exam table, her legs lifeless beneath the thin hospital gown, their stillness a betrayal that gnawed at her soul. She was a runner, damn it, a woman who'd conquered the Leadville 100, who'd pushed through blisters and exhaustion to cross finish lines with her son cheering. Now, she couldn't even wiggle her toes. Jake sat cross-legged on a vinyl chair in the corner, his Elon Musk biography open on his lap, though his eyes kept darting to her. His freckled face was tight with worry, and Emily hated that she was the cause. Sarah Mitchell stood by the window, her blonde ponytail swinging as she scrolled through her phone, likely researching neurological conditions. The room was too quiet, the kind of quiet that screamed bad news was coming. Dr. Michael Bennett, a neurologist with kind eyes and a salt and pepper beard, entered, his clipboard a shield against the questions Emily couldn't voice. "Emily, we've got some preliminary results," he said, his tone measured but warm, like a coach softening bad news. "The good news is, your vitals are stable, and there's no sign of acute trauma, stroke, spinal injury, nothing like that." Emily's heart lifted for a fleeting moment, a spark of hope igniting. "So, what's wrong with me?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Jake leaned forward, his book forgotten, and Sarah paused her scrolling to listen. Dr. Bennett sighed, setting the clipboard on the counter. That's the tough part. The MRI and blood work don't show a clear cause. Your symptoms, sudden bilateral leg paralysis, are unusual. We're looking at possibilities like Guillain-Barré syndrome, a pinched nerve, or even a rare autoimmune response, but nothing's definitive yet. We need to run more tests, an EMG, a lumbar puncture, maybe a nerve conduction study. The spark of hope flickered out, replaced by a cold weight in Emily's chest. More tests, she echoed, her voice cracking. How long will that take? I can't. I have a son, a job. I can't just sit here not knowing. Jake slid off his chair and moved to her side, his small hand finding hers. It's okay, Mom. They'll figure it out. Right, Dr. Bennett? His brown eyes, so full of trust, turned to the doctor, and Emily's throat tightened. Jake's faith in adults, in science, in heroes like Elon Musk, was unshakable, but she wasn't so sure anymore. Dar. Bennett offered a reassuring smile. We're doing everything we can, Jake. Your mom's in good hands. He turned to Emily. I know this is frustrating. We'll prioritize the tests and keep you comfortable. For now, we'll admit you overnight for observation. Overnight? Emily's voice rose, panic seeping through. She pictured Jake alone in their Boulder home, eating cereal for dinner, worrying about her. She pictured her freelance design clients dropping her, unable to wait for her to figure this out. She pictured her running shoes gathering dust in the corner, her identity slipping away with every second her legs refused to move. Sarah stepped forward, her nurse's instincts kicking in. Listen to me, she said, her voice firm but kind. You're not alone in this. I'll stay with Jake tonight, and we'll visit tomorrow. You need to let the doctors do their thing. You're a fighter, remember that time you ran the Boulder with a sprained ankle? This is just another race. Emily clung to Sarah's words, the memory of that 10K race flooding back. The pain had been brutal, but she'd pushed through, Jake's handmade sign, "Go Mom," waiting at the finish line. She squeezed Jake's hand, drawing strength from his warmth. Okay, she whispered. But I'm not staying here longer than I have to. Sarah grinned, a flicker of their old running club camaraderie. That's the Emily I know. Stubborn as hell. For a moment, hope flared again. Sarah's confidence, Jake's presence, even Dr. Bennett's calm demeanor, they were lifelines in this storm. Maybe the tests would find something fixable, something simple. Maybe she'd be back on the trails by next week, racing the sunrise with Jake cheering her on. But as the nurse wheeled her to a hospital bed on the 3rd floor, the weight of uncertainty returned, heavier than ever. The hallway stretched endlessly, its beige walls lined with posters about flu shots and physical therapy, reminders of a world where bodies worked as they should. Emily's room was small, with a single window overlooking the Flatirons, their rugged peaks a taunt of the freedom she'd lost. The nurse adjusted her murmuring about pain management, but Emily barely listened. Her mind was racing, replaying Dr. Bennett's words, no clear cause. What if this was permanent? What if she couldn't run, couldn't work, couldn't be the mom Jake needed? Jake settled into a chair beside her bed, his Musk book open again. Mom, maybe it's like a software glitch, he said, his voice bright with a child's optimism. Like, your brain's sending signals, but your legs aren't getting the update. Elon's working on stuff like that with Neuralink. Maybe there's a fix. Emily forced a smile, but her heart sank. Jake's faith in Musk was sweet, but this wasn't a rocket or a Tesla. This was her body, failing her in ways no genius could solve, or so she thought. Maybe, buddy, she said, ruffling his hair. You keep reading. Tell me something cool about Elon later, okay? He nodded, diving back into his book, and Emily envied his ability to find hope in pages. She stared out the window, the mountains blurring as tears pricked her eyes. Running had been her escape from everything, her mother's abandonment, her ex-husband's betrayal, the grind of single motherhood. Without it, she felt like she was drowning. Sarah returned from a quick call, her face serious. "I talked to my supervisor," she said, sitting on the bed's edge. "I'm taking tomorrow off to help with Jake. And I found a neurologist friend who might have some ideas about rare conditions. We're not giving up, Em." Emily nodded, grateful but overwhelmed. The hope Sarah offered was a lifeline, but it couldn't erase the fear clawing at her. What if the tests found nothing? What if this was her new reality, trapped in a body that wouldn't move, dependent on others for everything? The thought was a fresh wave of panic, a new climax in this nightmare. Dr. Bennett reappeared, his expression graver than before. "Emily, I just got a call from the lab. There's an anomaly in your blood work, nothing conclusive, but it's unusual enough to warrant a deeper look. It could point to a rare neurological condition, possibly triggered by an infection or stress. We'll need to wait for the full panel, but it's a lead." Emily's heart sank, the brief hope from Sarah's words snuffed out. A rare condition? That sounded like months of tests, treatments, uncertainty. She looked at Jake, his eyes still glued to his book, and made a silent vow, she'd fight this, whatever it was. For him. For herself. For the woman who'd crossed finish lines and carried her son through life's hardest miles. But as the hospital lights dimmed and Jake curled up in the chair, Emily felt the weight of the unknown pressing down. The road ahead was a trail she'd never run, steep and unforgiving. And for the first time, she wasn't sure she could keep up. Emily Harper lay in her hospital bed, the sterile hum of Boulder Community Hospital a constant reminder of her new reality. The Flatirons loomed beyond her window, their rugged peaks bathed in the soft glow of a Colorado sunset, mocking her with memories of trails she could no longer run. Her legs remained lifeless, a cruel anchor tethering her to this bed, this room, this nightmare. The morning's tests, EMG, nerve conduction, blood draws, had yielded nothing but vague possibilities, a rare neurological condition, maybe, or an autoimmune response, maybe. Dr. Bennett's words echoed in her mind, "We need more time." Time was the one thing Emily didn't have. She had Jake to care for, clients waiting on designs, a life that couldn't pause. Jake sat cross-legged on the floor, his Elon Musk biography splayed open beside him, but his attention was on Emily's laptop, balanced precariously on his knees. His brown eyes, usually bright with a 10-year-old's curiosity, were narrowed in focus as he scrolled through an online forum. Sarah had gone home to shower and check on her own kids, leaving Emily and Jake in a quiet that felt too heavy. Emily watched her son, his freckled face lit by the screen's glow, and felt a pang of guilt. He should be playing soccer with his friends or building one of his model rockets, not stuck in a hospital room, searching for answers she wasn't sure existed. "Mom, you gotta see this," Jake said, his voice cutting through the haze of her thoughts. He scrambled onto the bed, careful not to jostle her, and turned the laptop toward her. The screen showed a forum called FutureFix, a chaotic mix of posts about biohacking, neural tech, and experimental treatments. The thread Jake had opened was titled, "Musk Lab Leak, the Food That Fixes You." Emily's stomach twisted, a mix of skepticism and desperation. "Jake, what is this?" she asked, her voice hoarse from hours of silence. She adjusted herself against the pillows, wincing as the movement did nothing to stir her legs. "It's about a lab," Jake said, his words tumbling out in a rush. "They say it's connected to Elon Musk, like one of his secret projects. There's this food, some kind of seed or something, that helped people get stronger. Like, really fast. People on here said it fixed their muscles, even stuff doctors couldn't figure out." He pointed to a post by a user named BioTruthSeeker, heard from a lab tech in Silicon Valley. Musk's team found a nutrient-dense seed that boosts neural signals. They tested it on people with muscle issues. One guy walked again in hours. "They're keeping it quiet," patents or something. Emily's first instinct was to dismiss it. Internet forums were full of wild claims, miracle cures, conspiracy theories, snake oil dressed up as science. But Jake's eyes were wide with hope, the same hope that had carried her through marathons when her body screamed to quit. She leaned closer, scanning the post. It was vague, littered with typos and speculation, but one detail caught her: the labs in Palo Alto. Coordinates leaked. I got a sample, but they're locking it down. Jake, this sounds like a scam, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Her mind raced, torn between logic and the gnawing need for a lifeline. What if there was something to it? What if Musk, the man Jake idolized for building rockets and rewriting the future, had stumbled onto a fix for bodies like hers? It's not a scam, Mom, Jake insisted, his small hands gripping the laptop. Elon's different. He doesn't just make stuff up. He solves things. Like, he sent a car to space. If anyone could find a food that fixes legs, it's him. He scrolled to another post, this one with a blurry photo of a small, dark seed that looked like a cross between quinoa and chia. They call it neuraseed. It's supposed to, like, supercharge your nerves or something. Emily's heart thudded, a mix of hope and fear. The idea was absurd, a single food curing paralysis. It sounded like something her mother, Laura, would have chased after, always looking for the next big fix, the next escape. But Emily wasn't Laura. She was practical, grounded, a woman who trusted her legs and her grit, not miracles. Still, the word hours stuck with her. One guy walked again in hours. She pictured herself standing, running, crossing a finish line with Jake cheering. The image was so vivid it hurt. Okay, buddy, she said, forcing a smile. Let's say this is real. What do we do? We're in Boulder, not Palo Alto. And I'm stuck here. The word stung, a reminder of her helplessness. She glanced at her legs, still and useless under the hospital blanket. Jake's face lit up, undeterred. We find the lab. The post has coordinates. I can put them in my phone's map app. Maybe Sarah can drive us, or we can call them. Mom, what if this is it? What if this is the code to fix your legs? The spark of hope flared, fragile but undeniable. Emily wanted to believe him, to cling to the possibility that a solution was out there, waiting in some futuristic lab. She imagined a place like the ones Jake described from his Musk book, sleek, high-tech, filled with minds brilliant enough to rewrite her story. For a moment, she let herself hope, let herself picture standing again, feeling the crunch of gravel under her sneakers. But reality crashed back in, a fresh wave of tension. Even if this neuraseed was real, how would she get it? She was a single mom with a freelance income, not a tech billionaire with access to secret labs. Palo Alto was 1,200 miles away, and she couldn't even walk to the bathroom. The hospital bills were already piling up in her mind, each test another hit to her savings. And what if this was a dead end, another false hope that would crush Jake's faith in miracles? The door swung open, and Sarah strode in, her scrubs swapped for jeans and a Boulder Running Company t-shirt. Her blonde hair was damp from a shower, and she carried a paper bag that smelled faintly of burgers. Dinner delivery, she said, setting the bag on the bedside table. Jake, I got you fries. You're eating whether you want to or not. Her eyes narrowed as she caught the tension in Emily's face. What's going on? Jake launched into an explanation, showing Sarah the forum post. Emily watched her friend's expression shift from curiosity to skepticism, her nurse's instincts kicking in. You know better than to trust random internet posts, Sarah said, her voice gentle but firm. Half these forums are people selling supplements or worse. We need to stick with Dr. Bennett's plan. Real science, not some Musk fanboy fantasy. But what if it's not a fantasy? Emily snapped, surprising herself. The desperation in her voice hung heavy in the air. Sarah, they're saying it worked in hours. Hours. I can't wait weeks for more tests. Jake needs me. I need me. Sarah's face softened, but her eyes held a warning. I get it, Em. You're scared. But chasing some untested seed from a shady forum? That's not you. You're the woman who ran a marathon on a sprained ankle, who built a life for Jake from nothing. You don't need a miracle. You need answers. Emily's chest tightened, torn between Sarah's logic and Jake's hope. She looked at her son, his fingers still clutching the laptop, his belief in Musk unshaken. She wanted to be that certain, that fearless. But the weight of her motionless legs, the uncertainty of Dr. Bennett's rare condition, and the ticking clock of her life pressed down on her. Jake, save that post, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. We'll look into it. But we're not doing anything crazy yet, okay? He nodded, his smile a small victory in the darkening room. As Sarah unpacked the burgers and Jake rambled about Musk's latest project, Emily stared at the laptop screen, the blurry image of the new receipt burning into her mind. It was a long shot, a whisper of hope in a sea of doubt. But if there was even a chance it could give her legs back, she'd chase it, no matter how far, no matter how impossible. The trail ahead was steep, but Emily Harper had never backed down from a run. Emily Harper stared at the laptop screen, the blurry image of the new receipt, a small, dark grain promising miracles, burning into her mind. The hospital room in Boulder Community Hospital felt smaller by the second, its beige walls and antiseptic scent closing in like a trap. Her legs, still lifeless beneath the hospital blanket, were a constant reminder of what she'd lost, her identity as a runner, her ability to chase Jake across a park, her independence. Dr. Bennett's latest update had been a dead end, more tests, no answers, just a vague mention of a rare neurological condition that could take weeks to diagnose. Weeks she didn't have. Jake's voice broke through her spiraling thoughts. Mom, we can do this, he said, perched on the edge of her bed, his Elon Musk biography clutched like a lifeline. His brown eyes sparkled with a 10-year-old's unshakable faith. The lab's in Palo Alto. I mapped it, it's 1,200 miles. If we leave tomorrow, we could be there in 2 days. Sarah can drive, right? Emily's heart ached at his optimism, but doubt gnawed at her. Palo Alto was a world away from Boulder, Colorado, a world of tech billionaires and cutting-edge labs, not single moms with maxed-out credit cards. The forum post Jake had found, with its cryptic talk of a Musk-backed Neuraseed that restored strength in hours, sounded like a fantasy. But the alternative, waiting in this hospital bed, watching her life unravel, was unbearable. Sarah burst into the room, her Boulder Running Company t-shirt damp from a quick jog to clear her head. She carried a tray of hospital cafeteria coffee, her blonde ponytail swinging. Okay, Em, I got you the good stuff. None of that decaf nonsense, she said, setting a cup on the bedside table. Her sharp blue eyes caught the tension in Emily's face. What's with the conspiracy theorist vibe? Jake, you showing her more of that forum stuff? It's not just stuff, Jake protested, turning the laptop toward Sarah. It's real. People said this seed fixed their muscles. We have to go to the lab, Sarah. You'll help, right? Sarah's brow furrowed as she scanned the screen. Em, we talked about this. Internet forums aren't exactly peer-reviewed journals. You're pinning your hopes on a post by BioTruthSeeker. Come on. Emily's throat tightened, frustration bubbling up. I know it's a long shot, Sarah. But what else do I have? Dr. Bennett's got nothing but wait and see. I can't wait. Jake needs me. I need me. Her voice cracked, and she hated how desperate it sounded. She was the woman who'd run the Boulder with a sprained ankle, who'd built a life for Jake from the ashes of a failed marriage. She wasn't supposed to beg for miracles. Sarah sighed, sitting on the bed's edge. I get it, Em. You're scared. But driving across the country for some untested seed? That's not a plan, it's a gamble. What if it's dangerous? Or a scam? You've got Jake to think about. Jake's face fell, and Emily's resolve hardened. She looked at her son, his small hands gripping the laptop, his belief in Musk's genius unshaken. He deserved a mom who fought, who chased every lead, no matter how crazy. We're going, she said, her voice firm. I'll call Dr. Bennett, get discharged against medical advice if I have to. Sarah, I need you with me. Please. Sarah hesitated, her nurse's instincts warring with her loyalty. Finally, she nodded. Fine. But I'm driving, and we're stopping at every rest area to check on you. And if this lab turns out to be a bust, you're listening to me next time. Jake hooped, pumping his fist like he'd just launched a SpaceX rocket. Emily's heart lifted, a flicker of hope cutting through the fog of fear. Maybe this was crazy, but it was action, something she could control. For the first time since she'd woken up on her bedroom floor, she felt a spark of her old self, the runner who never quit. The next morning, Emily signed the discharge papers, ignoring Dr. Bennett's warnings about unpredictable progression and potential risks. Sarah packed her SUV with pillows, blankets, and a wheelchair borrowed from the hospital. Jake loaded a backpack with his Musk book, a notebook for research, and enough snacks to survive a cross-country apocalypse. As they pulled out of Boulder, the flat irons fading in the rearview mirror, Emily felt the weight of her decision. This wasn't just a road trip, it was a leap into the unknown, a marathon she couldn't run but had to finish. The highway stretched ahead, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through Colorado's Golden Plains. Sarah cranked a classic rock playlist, Lynyrd Skynyrd's Sweet Home Alabama, filling the car, a nod to their shared college days. Jake sat in the back, reading forum posts aloud, his voice bubbling with excitement. This guy says the seed's like a battery for your nerves. They tested it on rats first, then people. Mom, what if it works? Emily smiled, but her stomach churned. The hope Jake's words sparked was fragile, easily crushed by the reality of her condition. Her legs, propped on a pillow in the passenger seat, felt like strangers, heavy, useless, a reminder of how far she'd fallen. She glanced at the GPS, 1,187 miles to Palo Alto. 2 days of driving, rest stops, and the constant fear that this was a mistake. They stopped at a gas station in Grand Junction, the air thick with the scent of diesel and sagebrush. Sarah helped Emily into the wheelchair, her movements gentle but practiced. A few truckers glanced their way, and Emily's cheeks burned with embarrassment. She wasn't used to being seen like this, helpless, dependent. But Sarah's hand on her shoulder was a quiet anchor. You're still a badass, Em, she whispered. This is just a pit stop. The road blurred into hours of open plains, then the stark beauty of Utah's deserts. Jake pointed out rock formations, comparing them to Mars landscapes from Musk's SpaceX dreams. Emily tried to stay present, to focus on Jake's chatter and Sarah's off-key singing, but her mind kept drifting to the lab. What if the Neuraseed was real? What if it wasn't? The uncertainty was a new kind of climax, a tension that gripped her tighter with every mile. By evening, they reached a motel in Salt Lake City, its neon sign flickering against the twilight. Sarah wheeled Emily into a cramped room with faded floral wallpaper and a TV blaring reruns of Friends. Jake sprawled on one bed, scrolling through the forum on Emily's phone. Mom, there's a new post, he said, his voice urgent. BioTruth Seeker says the lab's tightening security. They're not letting anyone in without clearance. What do we do? Emily's heart sank, the hope from their departure fading. Security. Clearance. She was a graphic designer from Boulder, not a VIP with access to Musk's inner circle. The weight of the journey, the miles, the cost, the risk, pressed down, a fresh climax in this impossible race. She looked at Jake, his eyes still bright with belief, and forced herself to stay strong. "We'll figure it out," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "We've come this far. We're not turning back." Sarah raised an eyebrow but said nothing, unpacking takeout from a nearby diner, greasy burgers and fries, a taste of normalcy in this surreal journey. As they ate, Emily stared at the phone, the forum post glowing like a beacon. The coordinates for the lab were still there, a pinprick of hope in a sea of doubt. She didn't know how they'd get past security or even if the neuraceed was real. But she'd run marathons on sheer will before, pushed through pain and exhaustion to reach the finish line. This was no different. She'd find a way, for Jake, for herself, for the woman she still believed she could be. The motel room grew quiet, the only sounds the hum of the air conditioner and Jake's soft snores. Emily lay awake, the weight of her legs a constant reminder of the stakes. The road to Palo Alto was long, but she'd never back down from a challenge. Not when her mother left, not when her marriage crumbled, not when the trails got steep. This was her race, and she'd run it, even if she had to do it in a wheelchair. The Palo Alto lab loomed ahead, a sleek glass fortress that seemed to hum with secrets. Emily Harper gripped the armrests of her borrowed wheelchair as Sarah maneuvered the SUV into a parking lot that looked more like a spaceship hangar than a research facility. The building's reflective facade mirrored the California sun, its sharp angles a stark contrast to Boulder's rugged flatirons. After 2 days on the road, 1,200 miles of highways, diner burgers, and motel beds that smelled of stale coffee, Emily felt like she'd stepped into a sci-fi movie. Her legs, still motionless, were a heavy reminder of why she was here, a desperate chase for a seed that might be her salvation or just another dead end. Jake bounced in the back seat, his Elon Musk biography dog-eared and stuffed into his backpack. "This is it, Mom," he said, his voice electric with excitement. "It's like the Tesla factory, but for brains and stuff. We're gonna find the neuraceed, I know it." His freckled face glowed, his faith in Musk unshaken by the miles or the doubts that gnawed at Emily. Sarah killed the engine, her expression a mix of exhaustion and skepticism. I hope you're right about this," she said, adjusting her Boulder Running Company cap. "But this place looks like Fort Knox. How are we even getting in?" She glanced at the lab's entrance, where a security guard stood beside a keypad-locked door, his posture as unyielding as the glass walls. Emily's stomach churned, the weight of their journey pressing down. The forum post Jake had found. Biotruth Seeker's cryptic claim about a Musk-backed neuraceed that restored strength in hours, had fueled their trip, but now, staring at the lab's impenetrable facade, doubt crept in. She was a graphic designer from Boulder, not a tech insider. Her bank account was dwindling, her clients were impatient, and Jake needed a mom who could stand, not one chasing internet rumors. But turning back wasn't an option. Not when she could still feel the ghost of her running stride, the crunch of Colorado trails under her sneakers. "Let's try," Emily said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Jake, you've got the coordinates and the post. Maybe there's a name, a contact, something we can use." She adjusted her wheelchair, hating how it defined her now, a symbol of everything she'd lost. Jake scrolled through the forum on Emily's phone, his fingers flying. "There's a name here, Dr. Elena Voss. She's mentioned in a comment. Says she's a lead researcher. Maybe we can ask for her." His optimism was a lifeline, pulling Emily from the edge of despair. Sarah pushed the wheelchair toward the entrance, the wheels rumbling against the smooth pavement. The guard, a burly man with a buzz cut and a badge that read Securitech, eyed them warily. "State your business," he said, his voice clipped. Emily swallowed, her throat dry. "We're here to see Dr. Elena Voss," she said, forcing confidence. "It's about a research project. The neuraceed." She cringed at how ridiculous it sounded, like she was auditioning for a conspiracy podcast. The guard's eyes narrowed. "No visitors without clearance. Name and ID." Sarah stepped forward, her nurse's authority kicking in. "Look, my friend's dealing with a serious medical condition. We drove from Colorado because we heard Dr. Voss's work could help. Can you at least call her? Please." Her tone was firm, but Emily caught the strain in her voice, the same worry that had shadowed them since Boulder. The guard hesitated, then spoke into a radio clip to his shoulder. After a tense minute, he nodded. "Dr. Voss will see you. 5 minutes. Don't touch anything." He swiped a card, and the glass doors hissed open, revealing a lobby that looked like it belonged in one of Jake's sci-fi comics, white floors that glowed faintly, holographic displays flickering with data, and a faint hum of machinery in the air. Inside, Emily's breath caught. The lab was a world apart from Boulder's cozy coffee shops and trailheads. A receptionist with a tablet directed them to a conference room, where Dr. Elena Voss waited. She was a tall woman in her 40s, her dark hair pulled into a severe bun, her lab coat crisp over a black turtleneck that screamed Silicon Valley. Her eyes, sharp and assessing, landed on Emily's wheelchair, then flicked to Jake and Sarah. "You're here about the Neuraseed," Dr. Voss said, her voice cool but not unkind. "How did you hear about it?" She gestured to a sleek table, and Sarah wheeled Emily into place, Jake clutching his backpack like a shield. Emily's heart raced. This was it, the moment she'd gambled everything on. An online forum, she admitted, bracing for dismissal. "My son found a post about a seed that helped people with muscle issues. I can't move my legs. It happened 2 days ago, out of nowhere. Doctors don't know why. I need help." Dr. Voss's expression didn't change, but her fingers tapped the table, a tell of unease. "The internet is full of rumors," she said. "Our work here is experimental, highly confidential. We're studying neural regeneration, yes, but nothing's approved for public use. You shouldn't be here." Jake leaned forward, undeterred. "But it worked, right? The forum said people walked again. My mom's a runner, she needs this. You're like Elon, fixing impossible stuff." His voice cracked with desperation, and Emily's chest tightened. She hated putting him in this position, but his words sparked a flicker of hope, a brief respite from the weight of her reality. Dr. Voss softened, her gaze lingering on Jake. "You're a Musk fan, I see," she said, a faint smile breaking through. "He's an influence here. Look, I can't discuss ongoing trials, but I understand your situation." She paused, glancing at the door as if expecting someone to burst in. "I can give you a sample, 1 dose, no promises. It's untested outside controlled settings. You'd be taking a risk." Emily's breath caught, the hope surging again. A sample. A chance. She pictured herself standing, running, crossing a finish line with Jake cheering. But the scientist's caution, the mention of risk, brought a new wave of tension. What if it didn't work? What if it made things worse? She glanced at Sarah, who shook her head slightly, her nurse's instincts screaming caution. "I'll take it," Emily said, her voice firm. "I know the risks. I've got nothing to lose." The words felt like a vow, a runner's pledge to keep going, no matter the cost. Dr. Voss nodded, her expression unreadable. She stepped out, returning minutes later with a small, sealed vial containing a handful of dark, glossy seeds. They looked unremarkable, like something you'd find in a health food store, not a high-tech lab. 1 seed, dissolved in water, once a day, she said, handing the vial to Emily. "No more, no less. And you didn't get this from me. If anyone asks, you found it elsewhere." Emily clutched the vial, its weight both a promise and a burden. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Jake grinned, his faith vindicated, while Sarah's jaw tightened, her skepticism unspoken but clear. As they left the lab, the glass doors hissing shut behind them, Emily felt the stakes rise. The Neuraseed was in her hands, a tangible hope after days of despair. But the scientist's secrecy, the lack of instructions, and the looming question of what came next pressed down like a storm cloud. The road back to Boulder stretched ahead, 1,200 miles of uncertainty. She'd chased this lead on a whim, driven by Jake's belief and her own desperation. Now, with the seeds in her possession, the real race began, not just to regain her legs, but to reclaim her life. Sarah wheeled her to the SUV, the California sun dipping below the horizon, casting the lab in a surreal glow. Jake chattered about Musk's neural tech, oblivious to the tension between the adults. Emily stared at the vial, its contents a mystery wrapped in hope. She'd run marathons on grit alone, pushed through pain to reach the finish line. This was no different, just a longer, stranger trail. But as they pulled onto the highway, the weight of Dr. Voss's warning lingered. Untested. Risk. The hope of the Neuraseed was real, but so was the fear of what it might cost. Emily tightened her grip on the vial, her resolve hardening. She'd come this far. She'd see it through, for Jake, for herself, for the woman who still believed she could run. The Boulder sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, its glow spilling through the living room window of Emily Harper's modest home. She sat on the couch, her wheelchair parked nearby, the small vial of Neuraseeds resting in her palm like a fragile promise. The 1,200-mile road trip back from Palo Alto had been a blur of highway diners, gas station coffee, and Jake's endless chatter about Elon Musk's genius. Now, back in the familiar clutter of race medals and Jake's science projects, the reality of what she held hit her hard. This tiny seed, dark, glossy, unremarkable, could be the key to her legs, her life, her identity as a runner and mother. Or it could be nothing, a cruel trick born of desperation. Jake knelt beside her, his brown eyes wide with anticipation. "You're gonna do it, right, Mom?" he asked, his voice trembling with hope. His Elon Musk biography lay open on the coffee table, a dog-eared testament to his faith in miracles. Sarah, sprawled in an armchair with a takeout cup from Ozo Coffee, watched with a nurse's skepticism, her blonde ponytail loose after the long drive. The air was thick with tension, the weight of 2 days' travel and a single scientist's warning, untested, risk, hanging over them. Emily's fingers shook as she opened the vial, the faint clink of seeds against glass loud in the quiet room. Dr. Elena Voss's instructions echoed in her mind: 1 seed, dissolved in water, once a day. No more, no less. She tipped a single seed into a glass of water, watching it sink, then swirl as she stirred. The liquid turned faintly cloudy, like something from a health food store, not a high-tech lab. Her stomach churned with doubt. Was this really it? A seed to fix a body that had betrayed her? She'd run marathons on grit alone, pushed through pain to cross finish lines, but this felt different, a leap into the unknown, with Jake's hopes and her own hanging in the balance. You sure about this?" Sarah asked, leaning forward. Her voice was gentle but firm, her nurse's instincts on high alert. "We don't know what's in that thing. No lab results, no FDA approval, just some shady forum post and a scientist who looked like she was breaking every rule in the book." Emily's grip tightened on the glass. Sarah was right, this was reckless, maybe dangerous. But the alternative was worse, waiting in a hospital bed, watching her life unravel while Dr. Bennett ran endless tests with no answers. She thought of Jake, his freckled face beaming at every race, his handmade signs cheering her on. She thought of the trails above Boulder, the crunch of gravel under her sneakers, the wind in her hair. That was who she was, a runner, a fighter, a mom who didn't quit. She couldn't afford to doubt now. "I have to try," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. She raised the glass to her lips, the water cool and faintly earthy. It tasted like nothing special, like a health shake she tried in her marathon training days. She swallowed, feeling the liquid slide down, and set the glass down with a clink. Jake held his breath, and Sarah's eyes narrowed, watching her like a hawk. For a moment, nothing happened. The room was silent except for the distant hum of a neighbor's lawnmower, a slice of Boulder normalcy that felt surreal. Emily stared at her legs, still and heavy under a throw blanket, willing them to move. She pictured herself standing, running, crossing the finish line of the Denver Marathon, Jake's cheers echoing in her ears. But her legs stayed silent, mocking her with their stillness. Doubt flooded in, a crushing climax that made her want to hurl the vial across the room. What was I thinking? She thought. Chasing a fairy tale across the country, dragging Jake and Sarah with me. Then, a faint tingle sparked in her right calf, like a static shock or a muscle waking from sleep. Her breath caught. She flexed her toes, or tried to, and felt the tiniest twitch, a flicker of movement, barely there but undeniable. Her heart leapt, a surge of hope so intense it brought tears to her eyes. "Jake," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I felt something. My calf, it moved." Jake whooped, launching himself onto the couch beside her. "I knew it, Mom. It's working. The neuraceed's like Elon's neural tech, it's fixing you." His excitement was infectious, and for a moment, Emily let herself believe. She pictured herself running again, her sneakers pounding the trails above Chautauqua Park, the flatirons rising like sentinels. The tingle spread, faint but persistent, a whisper of her old strength returning. After days of despair, waking on her bedroom floor, the hospital's endless tests, the grueling road trip, this was a lifeline, a finish line in sight. Sarah stood, her hands on her hips. "Hold on, Em. Don't get ahead of yourself. It could be a placebo effect, or your nerves firing randomly. You know how the body works, sometimes it tricks you." Her words were a bucket of cold water, grounding Emily's soaring hope. Sarah knelt beside her, checking her pulse with a nurse's precision. "Any pain? Dizziness? Anything weird?" Emily shook her head, the tingle still there, faint but real. "Just, something. It's small, but it's there." She flexed her toes again, willing the movement to grow, but it stayed stubbornly faint. The hope that had flared so brightly dimmed slightly, tempered by Sarah's caution and her own fear. What if this was all it was, a fleeting sensation, not a cure? What if the seed was a fluke, or worse, a risk Dr. Voss had warned about? Jake, undeterred, grabbed his notebook from his backpack. "We need to track it, like a science experiment. Time, dose, what you feel, everything. Elon says data's the key to solving problems." He scribbled furiously, his handwriting a messy testament to his belief. Emily's heart ached at his enthusiasm, but Sarah's words lingered, a new climax of doubt. A placebo effect was possible, she'd read about it in her running days, how the mind could trick the body into temporary gains. But this felt different, didn't it? The evening wore on, the Boulder sky darkening to a deep indigo. Sarah cooked spaghetti in Emily's cramped kitchen, the scent of garlic and tomato sauce filling the house, a slice of normalcy amidst the chaos. Jake chattered about Musk's Neuralink, comparing the seed to a firmware update for your legs. Emily tried to stay present, to savor the hope, but her mind kept drifting to the vial. One seed down, a handful left. What if it wasn't enough? What if the tingle was a tease, a false start in a race she couldn't win? She flexed her calf again, chasing that faint spark. It was still there, weaker now, but not gone. She clung to it, a runner gripping the edge of a cliff. She thought of her mother, Laura, who'd walked away when things got hard, leaving a note and a lifetime of questions. Emily wouldn't do that. She'd fight, for Jake, for the woman who'd crossed finish lines and carried her son through life's hardest miles. Sarah set a plate of spaghetti in front of her, her expression softening. "You're doing this your way, Em," she said. "I don't love it, but I'm here. Just, be careful, okay? Jake needs you, seed or no seed." Emily nodded, her throat tight. The tingle in her calf was a fragile thread, a hope that could unravel with one wrong move. But it was something, proof that her body wasn't done fighting. As Jake scribbled in his notebook and Sarah cleared the plates, Emily stared at the vial, its remaining seeds glinting in the lamplight. The road ahead was uncertain, a trail steeper than any she'd run. But she'd taken the first step, tasted the possibility of a comeback. Now, she had to keep going, even if the finish line was still out of sight. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The morning sun filtered through the blinds of Emily Harper's Boulder home, casting stripes of light across the living room where she sat on the couch, her wheelchair a constant shadow at her side. The vial of Neuraceed sat on the coffee table, its remaining dark grains glinting like tiny beacons of hope, or mockery. 3 days had passed since her first dose, that fleeting tingle in her calf sparking a fire of possibility that had carried her through the grueling road trip from Palo Alto. But now, with the Flatirons looming beyond her window, their rugged peaks a reminder of trails she could no longer run, doubt crept in. The tingle had grown into a faint twitch in her toes, a whisper of movement, but it wasn't enough. She needed more, needed to stand, to run, to be the mom Jake deserved. Jake knelt on the floor, his notebook open to a page of scribbled observations. Day 3, 8:15 a.m., Mom moved her right toes twice. No pain. Seed dose at 7 a.m. His freckled face was serious, his brown eyes darting between Emily and his notes. It's working, Mom, he said, his voice bright with a 10-year-old's unshakable faith. You moved your toes more today than yesterday. It's like Elon's rockets, slow at first, then boom. He mimicked a launch with his hands, his Elon Musk biography lying nearby, its cover worn from constant reading. Emily forced a smile, her heart aching at his optimism. The twitch in her toes was real, she'd felt it, tested it, watched her right foot shift ever so slightly under the throw blanket. It was progress, a flicker of the strength that had carried her through marathons, through single motherhood, through the pain of her mother's abandonment. But it was so small, so fragile, like a single step in a race that stretched miles ahead. She glanced at the vial, its contents dwindling with each dose. What if this was all the Neuraceed could do? What if she dragged Jake and Sarah across the country for a false hope? Sarah bustled in from the kitchen, carrying a tray of oatmeal and coffee from Snarf's, Boulder's beloved sandwich shop. Her blonde ponytail was messy, her nurse's scrubs swapped for a hoodie after another night shift. She'd been staying over since their return, helping with Jake and keeping an eye on Emily, but her skepticism about the Neuraceed hadn't softened. Eat, Em, she said, setting the tray down. You need fuel, seed or no seed. Her sharp blue eyes lingered on the vial, her lips tightening. Emily's stomach twisted, sensing the lecture coming. Thanks, Sarah, she said, stirring the oatmeal absently. The scent of cinnamon and brown sugar was comforting, a slice of normalcy in a life turned upside down. But normalcy felt like a lie when her legs refused to move, when her freelance design clients were emailing about missed deadlines, when Jake's soccer practice was tomorrow, and she couldn't even drive him. Sarah sat across from her, her hands clasped. Em, we need to talk about this seed thing, she said, her voice low but firm. You're moving your toes, sure, but it's been 3 days, and that's it. You're pinning everything on some untested lab experiment from a shady scientist. What if it's not safe? What if it stops working, or worse? The words hit like a punch, reigniting Emily's doubts. She'd felt the tingle, seen the twitch, but Sarah's logic was a cold reality check. The Neuraceed was a gamble, a leap into the unknown based on a forum post and Dr. Voss's cryptic warning. Emily's fingers tightened around the spoon, her frustration boiling over. What do you want me to do, Sarah? Go back to the hospital. Wait for Dr. Bennett to run more tests while I lose everything. Jake needs me now, not in 6 months. Jake's head snapped up, his pencil pausing. Mom's getting better, he said, his voice sharp. The seed's working. You saw her toes move. Why can't you believe in it, like Elon believes in fixing stuff? His faith in Musk, in the seed, in her, was a knife to Emily's heart, both a comfort and a weight. Sarah's face softened, but her eyes held steady. Jake, I believe in your mom. She's the toughest person I know, ran the Leadville 100 with blisters the size of quarters. But this? She gestured to the vial. It's not science. It's hope dressed up as a cure. You're a runner, you know the difference between pushing through and chasing a mirage. Emily's chest tightened, the tension between her friend's caution and her own desperation a new climax. She wanted to scream, to throw the vial and prove Sarah wrong, but the twitch in her toes stopped her. It was real, wasn't it? She flexed her foot again, willing the movement to grow. The toes shifted, a fraction more than yesterday, and hope flared like a match in the dark. It's not a mirage, she said, her voice trembling. I felt something, Sarah. It's small, but it's there. I can't give up now, not when I'm finally moving forward. Sarah sighed, running a hand through her hair. I'm not saying give up. I'm saying be smart. Call Dr. Bennett, get him to test that seed. If it's legit, he'll back you up. But if it's not, she trailed off, the unspoken warning hanging heavy. The room fell silent, the only sound the distant chatter of neighbors on their morning walks, a bolder ritual that felt worlds away. Emily stared at the vial, its remaining seeds a dwindling lifeline. The hope of that first tingle had carried her through the road trip, through the lab's secrecy, but now it felt like a tightrope. One misstep, a placebo effect, a side effect, a dead end, and she'd fall, dragging Jake with her. Jake closed his notebook, his expression fierce. Elon wouldn't give up, he said. He built SpaceX even when everyone said it'd fail. Mom, you're like that. You keep going, no matter what. He reached for her hand, his small fingers warm against hers, and Emily's resolve hardened. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for him, for the boy who believed in rockets and miracles. Okay, Jake, she said, squeezing his hand. We'll keep going. But Sarah's right, we need to be smart. I'll call Dr. Bennett, tell him about the seed. Maybe he can run some tests. It was a compromise, a way to balance Jake's faith and Sarah's caution, but it felt like a step forward. She pictured herself standing, running, crossing a finish line with Jake's cheers in her ears. The twitch in her toes was a promise, fragile but real, and she'd cling to it like a runner gripping the final mile. Sarah nodded, relief flickering in her eyes. Good. I'll call him for you, set up an appointment. But promise me you'll slow down. No more doses until we know more. Her voice was soft, but the warning was clear. Emily agreed, though her fingers itched to reach for the vial. The hope of that morning's progress, the slight shift of her toes, the faint spark in her calf, was intoxicating, but Sarah's words echoed Dr. Voss's caution, untested, risk. A new climax loomed, the fear that this fragile progress could vanish, that the seed's promise was too good to be true. She thought of her mother, Laura, who'd chased dreams and left her behind. Emily wouldn't do that to Jake, but she couldn't stop fighting either. As Sarah cleared the breakfast dishes and Jake scribbled in his notebook, Emily stared out the window at the flatirons, their peaks sharp against the morning sky. Boulder was her home, the place where she'd rebuilt her life after her mother's abandonment, after her divorce. The trails were her sanctuary, her proof that she could outrun anything. Now, with the Neuraseed's faint promise and the tension between her friend and her son, she faced a new kind of race, one where the finish line was unclear, the stakes higher than ever. She flexed her toes again, chasing that flicker of strength. It was there, small but stubborn, like the first steps of a marathon. She'd keep going, for Jake, for herself, for the woman who'd crossed finish lines and carried her son through life's hardest miles. But as the morning light faded, the vial's shadow loomed larger, a reminder that hope was a dangerous fuel, one that could light the way or burn everything down. Emily Harper sat on her living room couch, the familiar clutter of race medals and Jake's science projects a fragile anchor in the storm of her life. The Boulder morning was crisp, the Flatirons glowing under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Her legs, still motionless except for the faint twitch in her toes, lay under a throw blanket, a constant reminder of the Neuraceed's promise, and its limits. For days had passed since her first dose, and while the slight movement in her toes had grown steadier, it wasn't enough to stand, to run, to reclaim the woman she'd been. The vial of seed sat on the coffee table, its dwindling contents a ticking clock. Jake's notebook, filled with meticulous observations of her progress, lay open beside it, his faith in Elon Musk's genius unwavering. Jake was at school, his backpack stuffed with his Musk biography and a thermos of hot chocolate from Ozo Coffee, a Boulder staple. Sarah had left for her hospital shift, promising to check in later with Dr. Bennett's latest thoughts on the Neuraceed. The house was quiet, too quiet, leaving Emily alone with her thoughts, and the weight of her body's betrayal. She flexed her toes, chasing that stubborn flicker of movement, and tried to summon the runner's grit that had carried her through marathons and single motherhood. But today, the effort felt hollow, like running into a headwind with no finish line in sight. The doorbell's chime jolted her, sharp and unexpected. Emily's heart thudded as she wheeled herself to the door, expecting a delivery or a neighbor dropping off a casserole. Boulder was that kind of town, people showed up with food when life got hard. But when she opened the door, her breath caught. Standing on the porch, clutching a worn leather purse, was Laura, her mother. The woman who'd walked out when Emily was 8, leaving a crumpled note and a lifetime of questions. Laura looked older, her auburn hair streaked with gray, her green eyes lined with wrinkles Emily didn't remember. But her posture, straight, defiant, was the same, as was the nervous way she twisted her ring, a habit Emily had inherited. "Emily," Laura said, her voice soft but unsteady. I heard you were going through something. I wanted to see you." Emily's fingers tightened on the wheelchair's armrests, a surge of anger and hurt crashing through her. This was the first climax, a raw-wound reopening. "Heard from who?" She snapped, her voice sharper than she intended. "You haven't called in years. Why now?" She wanted to slam the door, to shut out the woman who'd abandoned her, but her hands froze, caught in the pull of old pain. Laura's eyes dropped to the wheelchair, a flicker of guilt crossing her face. "A friend in Denver saw something online, about your condition. I know I don't have the right to show up like this, but I couldn't stay away. Not when you're hurting." She stepped forward, hesitating at the threshold. "Can I come in?" Emily's instinct was to say no, to protect the life she'd built without Laura. But Jake's face flashed in her mind, his curiosity about his grandmother, the questions Emily had dodged for years. Against her better judgment, she nodded, wheeling back to let Laura in. The air felt heavier as Laura stepped inside, her presence a disruption in the sanctuary of Emily's home. They sat in the living room, Laura perched on the edge of an armchair, Emily rigid in her wheelchair. The silence was thick, broken only by the distant hum of a neighbor's leaf blower, a Boulder autumn ritual. Emily's mind raced, memories flooding back, Laura packing a suitcase, her 8-year-old self watching from the hallway, begging her to stay. The note, "I need to find myself. I'm sorry," had been a knife, cutting Emily's trust in family, in love. She'd run to escape that pain, her sneakers pounding Denver streets, then Boulder's trails, building a life where she relied on no one but herself. "Why are you here, Laura?" Emily asked, her voice cold. She refused to call her mom, not after 24 years of silence, broken only by sporadic letters Emily had burned without reading. "If it's pity, I don't need it. I'm handling this." Laura's hands twisted her ring, her eyes glistening. "It's not pity," she said. "I know I failed you, Emily. I was young, lost, and I made a terrible choice. But I've followed your life, your races, your son. I saw you win the Denver Marathon online. I was so proud. Her voice cracked, and Emily's chest tightened, a flicker of connection sparking despite her anger. Laura had watched her, cared from afar. It wasn't enough, but it was something. The spark of hope was fleeting, quickly drowned by the weight of old wounds. Proud? Emily said, her voice rising. You left me. You don't get to be proud. You don't get to show up now because I'm in a wheelchair. She gestured to her legs, the Neuracede's faint promise mocking her. I've been fine without you. Jake and we're fine. Laura flinched, but her voice stayed steady. I know I can't fix the past. But I'm here now. I want to help, with Jake, with whatever you need. I've been volunteering at a clinic in Seattle, working with people who have mobility issues. I've learned things. Maybe I can help you figure this out. Emily's throat tightened, torn between rage and a desperate need for support. Laura's offer was a lifeline, a chance to lean on someone when her world was crumbling. But it came from the woman who'd walked away, who'd left her to face life alone. The tension was a new climax, a clash between her need for help and her fear of trusting Laura again. She thought of Jake, his faith in the Neuracede, his scribbled notes tracking her progress. He'd be home soon, his soccer cleats muddy, his questions about Laura inevitable. Emily had shielded him from her mother's absence, telling him stories of her own races instead of Laura's betrayal. But now, with Laura sitting across from her, the past was no longer a story she could control. I don't know if I can do this, Emily admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. You hurt me, Laura. And now, with this, she gestured to her legs, the wheelchair, the vial. I'm barely holding on. I can't handle you breaking my heart again. Laura's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. I know. I don't expect forgiveness. But let me try, Emily. For you, for Jake. I'll stay as long as you'll let me. The word stirred something in Emily, a faint hope, fragile as the twitch in her toes. She'd spent her life running from Laura's shadow, building strength through marathons and motherhood. But now, with her body failing and the Neuracede's promise uncertain, she wondered if letting Laura in could be another kind of strength. She thought of her races, the moments when she'd pushed through pain because Jake was waiting at the finish line. Maybe this was another race, one where trust was the trail. Okay, Emily said finally, her voice trembling. You can stay, for Jake. But don't expect miracles. The irony of her words hit her, given the Neuracede on the table. She flexed her toes, the faint movement a reminder of her own fragile hope. Laura's return was a complication she hadn't expected, a new layer of tension in a life already stretched thin. As Laura set her purse down, promising to make coffee, Emily stared out at the flatirons, their peaks sharp against the sky. Boulder was her home, the place where she'd rebuilt herself after Laura's departure, after her divorce. The Neuracede was a gamble, Laura's return a risk, but Emily was a runner. She'd faced steep trails before, pushed through pain to reach the finish line. This was no different, just a longer, messier race, with stakes higher than ever. The front door burst open, and Jake bounded in, his soccer bag slung over his shoulder. Mom, I scored a goal, he shouted, then froze, his eyes landing on Laura. Who's this? Emily's heart pounded, the weight of the moment crashing down. Jake, she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside. This is, your grandmother. Laura. Jake's eyes widened, a mix of curiosity and caution. Emily braced herself, knowing this was only the beginning. The past had resurfaced, and with it, a new race, one she'd have to run with her heart, not her legs. Emily Harper stood at the edge of her Boulder living room, her hands gripping the back of a chair, her heart pounding like it did at the start of a marathon. The morning sun streamed through the window, casting golden light across the flatirons, their rugged peaks a silent challenge. For the first time in over a week, her legs felt alive, not fully, not yet, but enough to bear her weight for a few trembling seconds. The Neuraseed, that tiny, unassuming grain from a Palo Alto lab, had done something extraordinary. 5 days of daily doses had turned the faint twitch in her toes into a steady pulse of strength, enough to push herself upright, to take a shaky step. It wasn't a sprint, but it was a start, and to Emily, it felt like crossing the finish line of the Denver Marathon all over again. Jake whooped from the couch, his Elon Musk biography forgotten as he clapped like he was at a Rockies game. "Mom, you're doing it. You're standing." His freckled face glowed with pride, his brown eyes wide with the same faith that had driven them to Silicon Valley. His notebook, filled with meticulous notes on her progress, Day 5, 7:45 a.m., Mom stood for 10 seconds, lay open on the coffee table, a testament to his belief in the seed's power. Sarah, back from her hospital shift, stood frozen in the doorway, her Boulder Running Company hoodie slung over one shoulder. Her sharp blue eyes widened, her usual skepticism replaced by cautious awe. Holy crap," she said, dropping her bag. "You're actually standing. How? When did this start?" She crossed the room in 2 strides, her nurse's instincts kicking in as she checked Emily's balance, her hands hovering like a spotter at a gym. Emily's legs trembled, her muscles straining under the unfamiliar effort. She gripped the chair tighter, her knuckles white. "This morning," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I took the seed at 7, like usual, and then I felt it. Not just a tingle, strength. I got out of the wheelchair and stood for a minute. Now this." She took another step, her right leg wobbling but holding, and a laugh bubbled up, raw and disbelieving. After days of despair, waking on her bedroom floor, the hospital's endless tests, the grueling road trip, this was a victory, a reclaiming of the runner she'd been. Laura, her mother, stood quietly in the corner, her auburn hair catching the sunlight. Since her unexpected arrival yesterday, she'd been a tentative presence, making coffee and helping with chores but keeping her distance. Her green eyes, so like Emily's, shimmered with something, pride, guilt, maybe both. "Emily, this is incredible," she said softly, twisting her ring. "You're so strong." Emily's chest tightened, the compliment a double-edged sword. Laura's return had stirred old wounds, memories of abandonment that clashed with the fragile hope of reconciliation. She wanted to snap back, to remind Laura she'd managed without her for years, but the triumph of standing, of feeling her legs again, softened her anger. For now, she let it go, focusing on the chair, the floor, the next step. Sarah knelt beside her, checking her pulse. "Okay, sit down before you overdo it," she said, her voice a mix of excitement and caution. "This is huge, but we need to talk to Dr. Bennett. Whatever's in that seed is doing something, and we need to know what." She glanced at the vial on the coffee table, its remaining seeds a dwindling supply. "You're down to what, 3 doses? We can't keep guessing." Emily eased back onto the couch, her legs buzzing with effort. The hope surging through her was intoxicating, a high she hadn't felt since crossing a finish line. She pictured herself running again, her sneakers pounding the trails above Chautauqua Park, Jake cheering as she rounded the final bend. But Sarah's words grounded her, a reminder that this breakthrough was fragile. The Neuraseed was still a mystery, its effects untested, its risks unknown. Dr. Voss's warning, untested, risk, echoed in her mind, a new climax of uncertainty. "I called Dr. Bennett this morning," Emily said, catching her breath. "He wants me in tomorrow to run tests, blood work, an EMG, maybe a scan. He's skeptical about the seed but said he'll analyze it if I bring a sample." She glanced at the vial, her lifeline shrinking with each dose. The thought of handing it over, of risking her supply, twisted her gut. But she needed answers, needed to know if this was real or a fluke. Jake bounced on the couch, undeterred. "It's real, Mom. Look at you. You're gonna run again, like in the Boulder. I bet Elon's team knew this would happen. They're probably testing it on, like, astronauts or something. His enthusiasm was a bomb, but Emily caught Laura's hesitant glance, a silent echo of Sarah's caution. Laura stepped forward, her voice tentative. Emily, I could help with the doctor visits. Drive you, watch Jake, whatever you need. I know I haven't earned it, but I want to be here. Her offer hung in the air, a fragile bridge over years of silence. Emily's throat tightened, the old pain resurfacing. Laura's return was a complication she hadn't planned for, a reminder of the mother who'd left her at 8, chasing dreams instead of staying. But Jake's presence, his soccer cleats still muddy from yesterday's practice, softened her resolve. He deserved to know his grandmother, even if Emily wasn't ready to forgive. We'll see, she said, her voice guarded. Let's focus on the doctor for now. Sarah nodded, pulling out her phone to text Dr. Bennett. I'll come with you tomorrow, she said. We need to know what's in that seed, chemical makeup, side effects, everything. If it's helping, great. If not, she trailed off, her eyes meeting Emily's. The unspoken fear, a placebo effect, a temporary spike, a hidden danger, was a new climax, a shadow over the morning's triumph. Emily flexed her toes, the movement stronger now, a steady pulse of possibility. She stood again, leaning on the chair, and took 3 steps toward the window. Each one was shaky, but they were hers, a reclaiming of the runner she'd been. The Flatirons stood sentinel outside, their trails calling her back. She pictured herself running, the wind in her hair, Jake's handmade signs waving at the finish line. The image was so vivid it hurt, a hope that carried her through the doubt. Jake scribbled in his notebook, his voice bubbling with ideas. We should tell the forum, Mom. Bio-Truth Seeker needs to know it's working. Maybe they can get more seeds. His faith in the online community, in Musk's vision, was unshakable, but Emily wasn't so sure. The forum was a wild card, a mix of hope and hearsay, and Dr. Voss's secrecy suggested the lab wasn't eager to share. Laura poured coffee from a pot she'd brewed, the scent of Snarf's dark roast filling the room, a bolder staple that grounded Emily in the moment. I could look into the forum, too, Laura offered, her voice cautious. I've been reading about alternative treatments at the clinic in Seattle. I might find something useful. Emily nodded, her emotions a tangle of gratitude and resentment. Laura's help was practical, but it came with baggage, years of absence, a note that still burned in Emily's memory, I'm sorry. She pushed the thought aside, focusing on her legs, the faint strength growing with each dose. She'd run marathons on grit alone, pushed through pain to reach the finish line. This was no different, a longer, stranger race, but one she could win. As Sarah planned the doctor's visit and Jake chattered about Musk's neural tech, Emily took another step, her legs trembling but holding. The breakthrough was real, a victory that lit up the dark corners of her fear. But the vial's dwindling seeds, Laura's uncertain presence, and the unanswered questions about the neuraseed loomed like clouds on the horizon. She'd tasted strength again, felt the ghost of her runner's stride, but the trail ahead was steep, and the finish line was still out of sight. Emily Harper stood in her Boulder living room, her hands gripping a pair of crutches, the cool metal a lifeline as she took a tentative step. The Flatirons glowed beyond the window, their rugged peaks framed by a crisp Colorado morning, a silent testament to the trail she was determined to run again. 6 days after her first neuraseed dose, her legs were no longer lifeless. The faint twitch in her toes had grown into a steady strength, enough to stand, to walk a few steps, to feel the ghost of her runner's stride. It wasn't a marathon, her legs still trembled, her balance shaky, but it was progress, a miracle born of a tiny seed from a Palo Alto lab. She clung to it, her heart soaring with each step, a taste of the woman she'd been before her body betrayed her. Jake sat cross-legged on the couch, his notebook open to a new page of observations. Day 6, 8:30 a.m., Mom walked 5 steps with crutches. No falls. His freckled face beamed, his brown eyes bright with the same faith that had driven them across the country. "You're gonna be running the Boulder soon, Mom," he said, his voice bubbling with excitement. His Elon Musk biography lay nearby, its cover worn from constant handling, a symbol of his belief in the seed's power. Sarah, back from a quick run to Snarf's for coffee, leaned against the kitchen counter, her Boulder Running Company hoodie tied around her waist. Her sharp blue eyes watched Emily's steps with a mix of awe and caution. "You're killing it, Em," she said, setting down a tray of dark roast and bagels. "But we need Dr. Bennett's test results. Those seeds are doing something, but we still don't know what, or how safe they are." Her nurse's instincts hadn't softened, even with Emily's progress, and the vial on the coffee table, down to 2 seeds, loomed like a ticking clock. Laura, Emily's mother, hovered near the window, her auburn hair catching the sunlight. Since her unexpected return 2 days ago, she'd been a quiet presence, making breakfast and running errands, trying to earn a place in a family she'd left behind. Her green eyes followed Emily's steps, a flicker of pride mixed with guilt. "You're incredible, Emily," she said softly, twisting her ring. "I knew you were strong, but this," she trailed off, the weight of their fractured past hanging between them. Emily's legs wobbled, and she eased onto the couch, her breath uneven. The triumph of walking was real, but it came with a shadow of fear, a climax of doubt that had haunted her since the hospital. What if the Neuraseed's effects faded? What if the last 2 seeds weren't enough? She thought of Dr. Elena Voss's warning in Palo Alto, untested, risk. The hope of her progress, the ability to stand and walk, was a lifeline, but it was fragile, tied to a dwindling supply and unanswered questions. The doorbell's sharp chime broke the moment, startling Emily. Sarah answered it, returning with a sleek envelope bearing a logo that made Emily's stomach drop, a stylized X with the words Neuralab beneath it. The Palo Alto Lab. Her hands trembled as she opened it, revealing a single sheet of paper, its tone cold and official. "Ms. Harper, the Neuraseed sample provided to you is proprietary and part of a confidential trial. You are required to return all remaining samples to Neuralab immediately. Failure to comply may result in legal action. Contact Dr. Elena Voss to arrange delivery." The room went still, the air heavy with tension. Jake's eyes widened, his notebook forgotten. "They can't take it back, Mom," he said, his voice rising. "It's working. You're walking. They can't just." He stopped, his small fists clenched, his faith in Musk's genius shaken for the first time. Sarah snatched the letter, her jaw tightening as she read. "This is bull, Em. They gave you the seeds, no strings attached. Now they're pulling this. We need to call Dr. Bennett, maybe he can back you up, prove you need them." Her voice was fierce, but Emily caught the worry in her eyes, a shared fear that this breakthrough could slip away. Laura stepped forward, her voice tentative. "I could call the lab, Emily. I've dealt with medical facilities before. Maybe I can reason with them, explain your situation." Her offer was earnest, but it stirred Emily's old wounds. Laura, the mother who'd walked away, now trying to fix things she hadn't earned the right to touch. Emily's mind raced, the letter a new climax in her already impossible race. The Neuraseed was her lifeline, the key to standing, to running, to being the mom Jake needed. Giving it up meant risking her progress, maybe her future. But keeping it, defying the lab, could mean legal trouble, or worse, cutting off access to more seeds if she needed them. The moral dilemma hit her like a wall. Keep the seeds for herself, or share the discovery, potentially helping others but losing her own chance at recovery. She thought of her races, the moments when she'd pushed through pain because Jake was waiting at the finish line. She thought of her mother's note, "I'm sorry," and the years she'd spent proving she didn't need anyone. The Neuraseed wasn't just about her legs, it was about her identity, her promise to Jake, her refusal to be defined by loss. But what if others were suffering, trapped in bodies that wouldn't move, waiting for a miracle like hers? "I can't give them up," Emily said, her voice trembling but firm. Not yet. They're working, Sarah. I walked today, 5 steps. I can't go back to that hospital bed, not knowing. She looked at Jake, his eyes pleading, and felt her resolve harden. But we need to be smart. Jake, check the forum, see if anyone else got a letter like this. Sarah, can you get Dr. Bennett to rush those test results? If we can prove the seed's safe, maybe we can negotiate with the lab. Jake nodded, grabbing Emily's phone to dive into the FutureFix forum. I bet BioTruthSeeker knows something, he said, his fingers flying. Maybe they're trying to hide the seed because it's too good. His enthusiasm was a spark of hope, a reminder of why she'd chased this lead in the first place. Sarah hesitated, then nodded. I'll call Bennett now. But if you keep those seeds, you're playing with fire. This lab's got money, lawyers, probably Musk's backing. You sure about this? Her voice was soft, but the warning was clear. Emily glanced at Laura, who stood quietly, her offer to help still unanswered. Laura, if you want to help, find out what you can about Neuralab, she said, her tone guarded. But don't make promises I can't keep. Laura nodded, relief flickering in her eyes, and Emily felt a pang of guilt. Letting Laura in was a risk, but so was everything else she'd done since waking on her bedroom floor. The morning stretched on, the Boulder air filled with the scent of pine and coffee, a slice of normalcy amidst the chaos. Emily stood again, her crutches steady under her arms, and took 6 steps toward the window. Each one was a victory, a defiance of the lab's demand, a reclaiming of her runner's heart. The Flatirons loomed outside, their trails calling her back, a promise she wasn't ready to abandon. Jake scrolled through the forum, his voice rising with excitement. Mom, there's a post, someone else got a letter. They're saying the lab's trying to control the seed because it's a game changer. His words fueled her hope, a vision of a future where she could run again, where others could, too. But the letter's threat lingered, a new climax that darkened the horizon. The Neuraseed was her lifeline, but it came with a cost, one she wasn't sure she could pay. As Sarah dialed Dr. Bennett and Laura searched for Neuralab contacts, Emily took another step, her legs trembling but holding. The breakthrough was real, a taste of the life she'd lost. But the lab's demand, the dwindling seeds, and the moral weight of her choice pressed down like a storm. She'd run marathons on grit alone, pushed through pain for Jake's sake. This was no different, just a steeper, stranger trail, with a finish line she had to believe was there. Emily Harper stood in her Boulder living room, her crutches propped against the couch, her legs trembling but stronger than they'd been in days. The morning light streamed through the window, casting the Flatirons in a golden glow, their rugged peaks a silent call to the trail she was determined to reclaim. 7 days after her first Neuraseed dose, she could walk 10 steps, shaky, deliberate steps that felt like a marathon victory. The tiny vial on the coffee table, now holding just 1 seed, was her lifeline, a miracle from a Palo Alto lab that had given her back a piece of herself. But the lab's letter demanding its return loomed like a storm cloud, threatening to snatch away her progress and her hope. Jake sat cross-legged on the floor, his phone glowing with the FutureFix forum, his freckled face intense as he scrolled through new posts. His Elon Musk biography lay open beside him, a symbol of his unshakable faith in the seed's power. Mom, there's something big here, he said, his voice urgent. BioTruthSeeker posted again, says they've got proof the lab's hiding the Neuraseed's results. They're calling it a cover-up. His brown eyes sparkled with excitement, but Emily caught the edge of fear in his voice, a crack in his hero worship of Musk. Sarah, fresh from a hospital shift, leaned against the kitchen counter, sipping coffee from a Snarf's to-go cup. Her Boulder Running Company hoodie was slung over a chair, her blonde ponytail loose after a long night. A cover-up, she said, her nurse's skepticism sharp. This is getting out of hand. First the letter, now conspiracy theories. We need Dr. Bennett's test results before you go all in on this forum stuff. Her eyes flicked to the vial, its single seed a reminder of the stakes. Laura, Emily's mother, stood quietly by the window, twisting her ring as she watched Emily's careful steps. Since her return 3 days ago, she'd been a tentative ally, running errands and offering help, but the weight of her past abandonment hung heavy. "I looked into Neuralab," Laura said, her voice cautious. "The clinic in Seattle has contacts in biotech. There's chatter about a Musk-funded project, but it's all hushed, patents, NDAs, big money." Her green eyes met Emily's, a flicker of determination breaking through her guilt. Emily's heart raced, the lab's letter burning a hole in her mind. The Neuraseed had given her legs back, inch by inch, but the demand to return it had forced a moral dilemma: keep it for herself or risk everything for a truth that could help others. She'd taken 12 steps this morning, her strongest yet, and the thought of losing that progress was a crushing climax, a fear that gripped her tighter with each passing day. She pictured Jake at the finish line of her races, his handmade signs cheering her on. She couldn't let him down, not now, not ever. Jake's phone pinged, and he gasped. "Mom, listen to this." He read aloud from a new post by BioTruthSeeker, "I'm a former Neuralab tech. The Neuraseed's part of a Musk-funded project to treat neurological disorders, ALS, MS, even paralysis. It boosts neural signals, repairs pathways. We saw patients walk in hours, but the lab suppressed the data. They want to patent it, control distribution, make billions. I've got documents. Who's with me to leak this?" The post included a grainy scan of a lab report, detailing trials where patients regained mobility after a single dose. Emily's breath caught, the revelation hitting like a shockwave. The Neuraseed wasn't just a fluke, it was a breakthrough, a game-changer for people like her, trapped in bodies that wouldn't move. The hope surged, a vision of herself running again, of others standing, walking, living. She imagined trails filled with runners who'd been told they'd never move again, finish lines crowded with families like hers and Jake's. The Neuraseed could change the world, not just her world. For a moment, she felt invincible, like she'd crossed the finish line of the Leadville 100, arms raised, Jake cheering. But the hope was fleeting, replaced by a new climax of fear. The lab's letter wasn't just a demand, it was a cover-up, a move to bury a discovery that could save lives. If she kept the last seed, she might secure her recovery, but at what cost? Others were suffering, waiting for a miracle she held in her hand. And if she went public, as BioTruthSeeker urged, she'd risk her supply, her progress, maybe even her safety. Neuralab had resources, lawyers, money, Musk's influence. She was a single mom from Boulder, a graphic designer with a dwindling bank account and a son who needed her. Sarah set her coffee down, her jaw tight. This is huge, but it's dangerous. If this whistleblower's legit, you're stepping into a fight with people way above your pay grade. You've got one seed left, use it, get better, let someone else deal with the lab." Her voice was firm, but her eyes betrayed her worry, a nurse's instinct to protect. Jake shook his head, his small fists clenched. "No way, Sarah. If the seed's helping Mom, it can help other people. We can't let them hide it." Elon wouldn't, he'd want the truth out. His faith in Musk was unshaken, but Emily saw the conflict in his eyes, the fear that his hero's lab might not be the beacon he'd imagined. Laura stepped forward, her voice steady. "Emily, I know I don't have the right to weigh in, but I've seen what happens when clinics prioritize profit over people. If this seed's real, it could save lives. You could be the one to make that happen." Her words were a quiet challenge, a chance for Emily to be more than the daughter she'd left behind. Emily's chest tightened, the moral weight crushing. She thought of her mother's note, "I'm sorry," and the years she'd spent running from that pain, proving she was enough. The Neuraseed was her lifeline, but it was also a responsibility. She pictured her races, the moments when she'd pushed through exhaustion because Jake was waiting. This was bigger than her legs. It was about Jake's future, about others like her, about a truth that deserved to be free. I'm going public, Emily said, her voice trembling but resolute. I'll share the lab report, post on the forum, get the word out. If the neuroseed's what they say, people need to know. She looked at Jake, his eyes wide with pride, and felt her resolve harden. But we're doing it smart. Sarah, get Dr. Bennett to analyze that last seed, prove it's safe. Laura, find out who else is talking about Neuralab. Jake, you're my tech guy, help me draft a post. Sarah's jaw dropped, but she nodded. You're crazy, Em, but I'm in. I'll call Bennett now. She grabbed her phone, her fingers flying, a nurse ready to fight for her friend. Jake pumped his fist, already typing on Emily's phone. I'm gonna tell BioTruthSeeker we're with them. We're like Musk's rebels, Mom. His excitement was infectious, a spark that lit up the room. Laura smiled, a rare warmth breaking through her guilt. I'll make calls, Emily. I know people who can amplify this. Her offer was a step toward redemption, and Emily felt a flicker of hope, not just for her legs, but for their fractured bond. The Boulder morning stretched on, the scent of pine and coffee grounding Emily in the moment. She stood again, her crutches steady, and took 12 steps to the window. The Flatirons loomed, their trails a promise she'd run again. The Neuraseed's truth was out there, a revelation that could change everything. But going public was a risk, a new climax that threatened her recovery, her safety, her family. She'd run marathons on grit alone, pushed through pain for Jake's sake. This was her steepest trail yet, but she'd face it, for herself, for others, for the finish line she had to believe was there. Emily Harper stood in her Boulder living room, her crutches leaning against the wall, her legs steady enough to take 15 steps without support. The late morning sun poured through the window, illuminating the Flatirons in a blaze of gold, their rugged trails a beacon of the runner she was fighting to become again. 8 days after her first Neuraseed dose, the seed's effects were undeniable. She could walk short distances, her muscles waking from a week-long slumber. The vial on the coffee table was empty now, its last seed taken this morning, but Emily's decision to go public with the lab's cover-up had ignited a fire bigger than her own recovery. She wasn't just fighting for her legs, she was fighting for everyone who needed the Neuraseed's promise. Jake sat at the dining table, his laptop glowing with the FutureFix forum, his freckled face lit with focus as he typed furiously. His Elon Musk biography lay nearby, a reminder of the faith that had driven them to Palo Alto and now fueled his online campaign. Mom, we're trending, he said, his voice electric. BioTruthSeeker shared our post, and it's got, like, 1,000 likes. People are posting their own stories, paralysis, MS, all kinds of stuff. They want the seed. His brown eyes sparkled, his tech skills turning their fight into a movement. Sarah paced the room, her phone pressed to her ear as she spoke with Dr. Bennett. Her Boulder Running Company hoodie was slung over a chair, her blonde ponytail swinging with each step. Yes, doctor, we need those test results yesterday, she said, her nurse's authority cutting through. The lab's stonewalling us, and we've got a groundswell online. We need proof the seed's safe. She hung up, her sharp blue eyes meeting Emily's. Bennett's lab is analyzing the seed sample you gave him. He's floored by your progress, Em, but he's worried about side effects. We're in uncharted territory. Laura, Emily's mother, stood by the kitchen counter, sorting through a stack of emails from her Seattle clinic contacts. Since her return, she'd thrown herself into the fight, leveraging her network to uncover more about Neuralab. I got a lead, she said, her auburn hair catching the light as she twisted her ring. A biotech friend says Neuralab's parent company is tied to Musk's Neuralink. They're rushing a patent, but there's internal dissent, some scientists want the data public. Her green eyes held a quiet resolve, a bid to prove she could be here for Emily now. Emily's heart pounded, the weight of their fight a new climax. The whistleblower's revelation, that the Neuraseed was part of a Musk-funded project to treat neurological disorders, suppressed for profit, had set their course. Going public had been her call, a defiance of Neuralab's demand to return the seeds, but the lab's resistance was fierce. A follow-up email had arrived last night, threatening legal action and hinting at proprietary consequences if she continued. The fear of losing her progress, of Neuralab cutting off future access, gripped her like a vice. She'd walked 15 steps today, but without more seeds, could she keep going? She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "We're not backing down," she said, her voice firm. "Jake, keep pushing the forum, share every story you find. Sarah, stay on Bennett for those results. Laura, see if your contact can connect us to those dissenting scientists. If we can prove the seed safe and effective, we'll force Neuralab's hand." She thought of her races, the moments when she'd pushed through pain because Jake was waiting at the finish line. This was bigger, a marathon for everyone who'd been told they'd never move again. Jake grinned, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "I'm posting a video, Mom. You walking, talking about the seed, it'll go viral." His enthusiasm was a spark of hope, a vision of their story reaching thousands, maybe millions. Emily nodded, her heart swelling. Jake's tech skills, honed on school projects and his Musk obsession, were turning their fight into a digital uprising. Posts on X, retweeted by disability advocates and biohackers, were amplifying their cause, with hashtags like #NeuraSeedNow trending locally. Sarah sat beside Emily, her expression softening. "You're a force, Em," she said. "I was skeptical, but look at you, walking, leading this charge. Just, be careful. Neuralab's got deep pockets. If they come after you, it's not just about the seeds. It's your life, Jake's future." Her words were a reminder of the stakes, but also a testament to their friendship, forged on Boulder's trails and late-night coffee runs. Laura poured coffee from a Snarf's carafe, the scent of dark roast grounding Emily in the moment. "I'm proud of you, Emily," she said, her voice tentative but sincere. "I know I don't have the right, but seeing you fight like this, it's everything I wasn't." The admission hung heavy, a bridge over their fractured past. Emily's chest tightened, torn between resentment and a fragile hope for reconciliation. Laura's help was practical, but it came with the weight of years, her note, "I'm sorry," still a scar. The hope of their growing movement was palpable, a wave of support that felt like crossing a finish line. Emily stood, her legs trembling but holding, and walked to the window, 16 steps, her best yet. The Flatirons loomed, their trails a promise she'd run again, not just for herself but for everyone the Neura seed could help. She imagined a world where paralysis wasn't a life sentence, where families like hers could hope again. The online traction, Jake's videos, Laura's leads, they were building something unstoppable, a community-driven fight that echoed Boulder's spirit of resilience. But the hope was tempered by a new climax of resistance. An email from Neuralab arrived as Emily returned to the couch, its tone colder than the last: "Cease all public discussion of the Neura seed immediately. Unauthorized disclosure violates our terms and may result in severe legal and financial consequences." Attached was a cease and desist order, naming Emily and citing intellectual property theft. The words hit like a punch, a threat to her recovery, her family, her fight. Neuralab wasn't just protecting a patent, they were silencing a truth that could save lives. Jake's face paled as he read the email over her shoulder. "They can't do this, Mom," he said, his voice cracking. "We're helping people. Why would Elon let them hide it?" His faith in Musk wavered, a child's hero tarnished by corporate greed. Emily's heart ached, she'd chased the Neura seed because of Jake's belief, and now she had to shield him from its fallout. Sarah's jaw tightened, her nurse's calm giving way to anger. "This is intimidation, Em. They're scared because you're getting traction. We need to double down, get those test results, rally more support. I'll call a lawyer friend, see what we can do." Her resolve was a lifeline, a reminder that Emily wasn't alone. Laura stepped forward, her voice steady. I'll reach out to my contact again, she said. If there's dissent inside Neuralab, we can find allies. Scientists, whistleblowers, anyone who'll talk. You're not fighting this alone, Emily. Her words were a quiet vow, a chance to prove she could stay this time. Emily nodded, her emotions a tangle of gratitude and caution. Laura's return was a risk, but so was this entire fight. Emily stood again, her legs stronger now, and walked to the dining table, 18 steps, a new record. The flatirons glowed outside, their trails a symbol of the race she was running, not just for her legs but for a truth that belonged to everyone. She thought of her marathons, the moments when she'd pushed through pain because Jake was waiting. This was her steepest trail yet, a fight against a lab with money and power, but she had something they didn't, a community, a son, a purpose. Jake uploaded his video, a shaky clip of Emily walking, her voice steady as she spoke. The Neuraseed gave me my legs back. Neuralab wants to hide it, but we won't let them. Share your story, let's make this public. The post went live, retweets flooding in from ex-users across the country, from disability activists to tech enthusiasts. The Boulder community rallied, too, local runners, coffee shop regulars, even Snarf staff sharing the hashtag #Neuraseednow. As Sarah coordinated with Dr. Bennett and Laura made calls, Emily took another step, her legs trembling but defiant. The fight for the Neuraseed was bigger than her, a movement born of her grit and Jake's tech savvy. But Neuralab's threat loomed, a new climax that could cost her everything. She'd run marathons on heart alone, carried Jake through life's hardest miles. This was no different, just a longer, fiercer race, with a finish line she had to believe was there. Emily Harper stood at the edge of Chautauqua Park, the flatirons rising like ancient guardians against a crisp Boulder sky. The morning air carried the scent of pine and earth, a familiar embrace that stirred memories of countless runs, her sneakers pounding the trails, her breath syncing with the rhythm of the mountains. 9 days after her first Neuraseed dose, she could walk 20 steps without crutches, her legs shaky but defiant, a testament to the seed's power and her own resolve. The empty vial sat in her pocket, a reminder of the fight that had brought her here, not just for her legs, but for a truth now rippling across the world, thanks to her public stand against Neuralab. Jake stood beside her, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his Elon Musk biography tucked inside. His freckled face glowed with pride, his brown eyes scanning the trail ahead. "You're gonna crush this, Mom," he said, his voice bright with the faith that had carried them from Boulder to Palo Alto and back. His notebook, filled with notes on her recovery, was at home, replaced today by a GoPro to capture her first walk on the trail, a video for the Future Fix forum, where their story had sparked a movement. Sarah adjusted her Boulder Running Company cap, her blonde ponytail swinging as she checked Emily's balance. "Take it slow, Em," she said, her nurse's caution tempered by a grin. "You're a badass, but you're not running the Boulder yet." Her sharp blue eyes softened, reflecting the bond forged through hospital rooms, road trips, and their fight to expose the Neuraseed's potential. Dr. Bennett's test results, shared yesterday, had confirmed the seed's neural-enhancing properties, with no immediate side effects, bolstering their case against Neuralab. Laura, Emily's mother, stood a few steps back, her auburn hair catching the sunlight as she twisted her ring. Since her return, she'd worked tirelessly to support Emily's fight, connecting with biotech insiders, rallying online support, while navigating the fragile terrain of their fractured past. Her green eyes held a quiet hope, a longing to be more than the woman who'd left Emily at 8. "This is your trail, Emily," she said softly. "I'm just glad to see you on it." Emily's chest tightened, the weight of Laura's presence a mix of pain and possibility. The Neuralab fight was far from over, their cease and desist order still loomed, with threats of lawsuits and proprietary consequences, but today wasn't about the lab. It was about her legs, her heart, the family she was rebuilding step by step. The tension of Neuralab's threats was a climax she'd face later, for now, she focused on the trail, a short half-mile loop she'd once run in minutes, now a monumental challenge. She took her first step, the gravel crunching under her sneakers, a sound that brought tears to her eyes. Each step was deliberate, her muscles straining but holding, the neuracede's effects amplified by her will. Jake walked beside her, his GoPro steady, narrating like a sports commentator, Emily Harper, marathon champ, back on the trail. His enthusiasm was a spark of hope, reminder of why she'd fought, for him, for herself, for the woman who'd crossed finish lines and carried her son through life's hardest miles. Sarah kept pace on her other side, ready to catch her if she stumbled. "You've got this, Em," she said, her voice warm. "Remember the Leadville 100? You ran through blisters and a thunderstorm. This is just a warm-up." The memory of that grueling race, with Sarah cheering at the finish, grounded Emily, tethering her to the strength she'd always had. Laura followed quietly, her presence a steady hum in Emily's awareness. Their reconciliation was tentative, built on small moments, Laura making coffee, helping with Jake's homework, sharing stories of her years in Seattle. Yesterday, over Snarf's bagels, Laura had opened up about her leaving, a spiral of depression, a fear she wasn't enough for Emily or her father. "I ran because I was scared," she'd said, tears in her eyes. "I'm not running now." The confession hadn't erased the pain of her note, "I'm sorry," but it had cracked open a door, a chance for something new. Emily's legs trembled as she reached the trail's first incline, a gentle slope that felt like a mountain. She paused, catching her breath, and looked at Jake. "Tell me something from your Musk book," she said, needing his voice to anchor her. He grinned, launching into a story about SpaceX's first rocket landing, his words a rhythm she matched with her steps. The trail stretched ahead, its gravel path winding through meadows dotted with wildflowers, a Boulder autumn in full bloom. The hope of this moment was overwhelming, a high that rivaled her marathon victories. She was walking, on a trail she'd thought she'd lost forever. The neuracede had given her this, but so had her fight, the road trip to Palo Alto, the decision to go public, the community rallying online. Jake's videos had gone viral, shared by ex-users from Denver to DC, with hashtag neuracede now trending nationally. Disability advocates, biohackers, even local Boulder runners had joined the cause, flooding Neuralab with demands for transparency. Dr. Bennett's results, posted on the forum, had fueled the fire, proving the seed's potential to treat neurological disorders. But the hope was tempered by a new climax of uncertainty. The empty vial in her pocket was a stark reminder, no more seeds, no guarantee of sustained recovery. Dar. Bennett had warned that the effects might fade without continued doses, and Neuralab's silence on future access was deafening. Their legal threats hung over her, a shadow that could cost her everything, her savings, her home, Jake's stability. She defied them for the truth, but the cost was mounting, a race with no clear finish line. Laura's voice broke through her thoughts. "Emily, I found something last night," she said, stepping closer. "A scientist from Neuralab, a dissenter, reached out through my Seattle contact. They're willing to testify about the cover-up, share trial data. It could tip the scales." Her words were a lifeline, a chance to pressure Neuralab into releasing the seed. Emily's heart lifted, but the pain of Laura's past lingered, a reminder that trust was a risk. "Thanks, Laura," Emily said, her voice soft but guarded. "Keep pushing that lead. We need every edge." She took another step, her legs stronger now, and felt a shift, not just in her body, but in her heart. Laura wasn't the mother she'd needed at 8, but she was here now, fighting for her. Maybe that was enough for a start. The trail curved, the Flatirons looming closer, their granite faces a mirror of Emily's resolve. She walked 30 steps, then 40, each one a defiance of the hospital bed, the wheelchair, the despair of that first morning. Jake's GoPro captured it all, his narration growing emotional. "This is my mom, the strongest person I know. The neuracede's hers, and it's yours, too." Sarah grinned, wiping her eyes, and even Laura's stoic facade cracked, a tear tracing her cheek. Emily reached a bench at the trail's halfway point, her legs burning but holding. She sat, catching her breath, and looked at her family, Jake, Sarah, Laura, an unlikely team forged by her fight. The Neuraseed had brought her here, but so had her grit, her refusal to quit. She thought of her mother's abandonment, her divorce, the marathons that had taught her to keep going. This trail was her homecoming, a symbolic return to the runner she'd always been, even when her legs failed. The fight wasn't over. Neuralab's threats, the uncertainty of her recovery, the need for more seeds. They were challenges she'd face tomorrow. But today, she'd walked a trail, felt the earth under her feet, seen pride in Jake's eyes. She stood again, her legs trembling but defiant, and took one more step. The Flatirons watched, silent witnesses to her triumph. She wasn't running yet, but she would. For Jake, for herself, for the truth she'd set free. Emily Harper stood at the starting line of the Boulder Creek Path 5K, her sneakers laced tight, her heart pounding like it did before every race. The Flatirons loomed in the distance, their granite peaks glowing under a late May sunrise, a testament to the trails that had called her back. 10 days after her first Neuraseed dose, Emily was no longer confined to a wheelchair or crutches. Her legs, once lifeless, now carried her with a steady strength, allowing her to walk a mile and jog short bursts. The empty vial was a relic of her past, its legacy alive in every step she took in the global movement she'd sparked by exposing Neuralab's cover-up. Today, she wasn't just running for herself, she was running for Jake, for the community that had rallied behind her, for everyone the Neuraseed could help. Jake bounced beside her, his race bib pinned crookedly to his Boulder Running Company t-shirt, his freckled face alight with excitement. "You're gonna kill it, Mom," he said, clutching a handmade sign that read "Go Mom. Neuraseed Champ." His Elon Musk biography was back home, its lessons of bold action now embodied in their fight. His GoPro, used to document Emily's recovery for the Future Fix forum, was with Sarah, ready to capture this moment for the thousands following their story online. Sarah adjusted her cap, her blonde ponytail swinging as she stretched. "Don't push too hard, Em," she said, her nurse's caution softened by a grin. "You're a miracle, but you're still human." Dar. Bennett's tests, finalized last week, had confirmed the Neuraseed's safety, showing neural regeneration with no immediate side effects, though long-term data was still needed. Sarah's support, through hospital rooms, road trips, and legal battles, had been Emily's anchor, a bond as strong as Boulder's granite. Laura stood a few steps back, her auburn hair tucked under a sun hat, her green eyes shimmering with pride. Since her return, she'd fought alongside Emily, connecting with Neuralab dissenters and building bridges with Jake. Their reconciliation was a work in progress, the pain of Laura's abandonment, "I'm sorry," still a scar, but moments like this, standing together at a race, were stitches in a healing wound. "You're unstoppable, Emily," Laura said, her voice steady. "I'm so proud to be here." Emily's throat tightened, the weight of their journey a quiet climax. 10 days ago, she'd woken on her bedroom floor, her legs useless, her identity as a runner stolen. The hospital's uncertainty, the Palo Alto trip, Neuralab's threats, they'd pushed her to her limits. But she'd fought back, driven by Jake's faith, Sarah's loyalty, and her own refusal to quit. Going public with the Neuraseed's truth had been a risk, met with legal threats and corporate silence, but it had ignited a movement. The Future Fix forum, amplified by Jake's videos and X-posts, had rallied thousands, patients, advocates, scientists, demanding open access to the seed. A coalition, including Neuralab whistleblowers, was negotiating with regulators, and early talks of generic production were underway. Emily's story was no longer hers alone, it was a beacon for hope. The race whistle blew, and Emily started at a walk, her legs steady but cautious. The Boulder Creek path wound through meadows and cottonwoods, the creek's gentle rush a soothing rhythm. Runners streamed past, locals in Snarf's t-shirts, college kids with earbuds, families pushing strollers, but Emily didn't care about speed. Each step was a triumph, a defiance of the despair that had nearly broken her. Jake jogged beside her, his sign waving, his chatter a lifeline. "You're at a quarter mile, Mom. Faster than yesterday." Sarah kept pace, her eyes scanning Emily for signs of strain. "Looking strong," she said, handing over a water bottle. "The forum's blowing up, your video from Chautauqua's got 10,000 views." The online support, from Boulder to Boston, was a wave that carried Emily forward. Local news had covered her story, dubbing her the Neuraseed Runner, and a crowdfunding campaign was raising funds for legal defense against Neuralab's threats. Laura walked behind, her presence a quiet comfort. Last night, over coffee at Ozo, she'd shared more about her years away, volunteering at a Seattle clinic, helping patients like Emily, trying to atone for leaving. "I was lost," she'd said, her eyes wet. "But you found your way, Emily. You're the mother I couldn't be." The words hadn't erased the past, but they'd built a bridge, one Emily was learning to cross for Jake's sake. The hope of this moment was electric, a high that surpassed her marathon medals. Emily quickened her pace, her legs responding with a jog, short, careful strides that felt like flying. The creek sparkled beside her, the Flatirons watching, her family cheering. She was running, not just for her legs but for the truth she'd set free. The coalition's progress, Dr. Bennett's data, whistleblower testimonies, public pressure, was forcing Neuralab to the table. A preliminary agreement for limited seed distribution was in the works, a victory born of Emily's courage and Jake's tech skills. But the hope was tempered by a new climax of uncertainty. Without more seeds, her recovery could plateau or regress. Dr. Bennett had warned that neural gains might fade without sustained treatment, and Neuralab's grip on production was a bottleneck. The legal threats hadn't stopped, with a hearing looming next month. The coalition needed more funding, more allies, to ensure the seed reached everyone who needed it. Emily's race wasn't over, it was evolving, a relay she'd pass to others. At the 1-mile mark, Emily's legs burned, but she pushed on, her jog steady now. Jake's sign bobbed ahead, his voice carrying, "You're halfway, Mom. You're a rock star." Sarah laughed, snapping photos, while Laura's quiet clapping echoed like a heartbeat. The Boulder community lined the path. Runners from her old club, baristas from Snarf's, neighbors who'd brought casseroles when she was hospitalized. Their cheers were a chorus, a reminder that she'd never fought alone. The final stretch loomed, the finish line marked by a banner near Boulder Creek. Emily's breath came fast, her muscles straining but alive. She thought of her first marathon, the pain of mile 20, Jake's tiny hand waving a sign. She thought of her mother's absence, her divorce, the hospital bed that had nearly defined her. The Neuraseed had been a spark, but her grit, her family, her community, they were the fire. She broke into a run, a true run, her sneakers pounding the path, her heart soaring. The finish line came too soon, Jake's sign a blur as she crossed it. The crowd roared, a sea of faces, Boulder locals, forum followers, even a reporter from the Daily Camera. Jake tackled her in a hug, his arms tight. "You did it, Mom. You're back." Sarah high-fived her, tears in her eyes. "Legend status, M. Forever." Laura stepped forward, her smile trembling. "I've never seen anything like you," she said, and Emily hugged her, a tentative embrace that felt like a promise. They sat by the creek, sipping water, the Flatirons glowing as the sun climbed. Emily's legs ached, but it was a good ache, a runner's ache. The race had been short, but it was hers, a symbol of her return, her strength, her heart. The Neuraseed's impact was spreading, with clinical trials planned and advocates pushing for accessibility. Emily's story had lit a fuse, and the world was listening. The fight wasn't over. Neuralab's resistance, the uncertainty of her long-term recovery, the coalition's work, they were trails she'd keep running. But today, she'd crossed a finish line, surrounded by her son, her friend, her mother. She thought of her marathons, the moments when she'd pushed through for Jake. This was her greatest race, not for a medal but for a life reclaimed, a truth shared, a family rebuilt. The Flatirons stood sentinel, their trails waiting. Emily Harper was a runner, and she was home. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?